Thanks for having me here, first and foremost, Omni and IHR. I'm Marcell Edwards, as it says on the screen, obviously. I work for Adidas in global talent acquisition, so I lead on our global strategic direction of talent acquisition across the globe, primarily focusing on operational activity within emerging markets in Europe, as well as leading on our DE&I inclusive hiring strategies as well, which I've just designed for the brand globally, which is now landing in North America and Latin America currently. Aside from that also, I sit on our ERG DE&I councils for race, ethnicity and culture. I'm a board member and trustee at charity, looking after EDI governance at the charity, a board advisor at Leaders in Sport Diversity Series, and I have my own business as well, where I go and do a lot of DEI consultancy and inclusive hiring practices at different companies and public speaking and that type of thing. So relatively busy, bit of a waffle there. I have 3 children as well, so that keeps me very active. But yeah, as one of the reasons why I'm here, I love doing it and I love imparting some knowledge onto people and learning a lot more from all of you here. So that's what I'm aiming to get out today as well. So thanks for having me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. So the first question then we have for you is, what do you think has been the biggest shift for TA managers or leaders over the last few years?
Probably a lot of you can answer it yourselves, right? There's been a huge shift in our industry and in our space and in our professions. Certainly since 2019, 2018, I think everything's gone from being reactive, want something and then, want something now, want something in immediately. And then your hiring manager saying, well, where's my talent pipelines? How do you reduce its cost to hire? So our jobs went from being recruiters with a little bit of strategic input here to not just people that influence on employer brand. Now we're looking at how do we become DEI ambassadors? How do we become EVP specialists? How do we also then bring in early careers talent? So the way I've seen TA evolve and shift is that we are tending to be, or organizations or leaders are tending to put way more on our plate. So making us try and be kind of jack of all trades in some instances, when in fact we're not. Talent acquisition has a specific function, a specific role, and all those other sub-functions, they have their own roles as well. So for me, they're the biggest shifts I've seen in our jobs, and my job in particular, and other jobs that I've seen in other industries. But it's how we then translate that across to our board directors, across to our company directors, and say, do you know what? We can actually invest here, and that will elevate not only me, but elevate our business as well. So investing in employer branding, DEI specialists, instead of putting it all onto our shoes, because otherwise we're not going to become proactive. We're always going to remain in that reactive bucket because we're always going to be wheel spinning. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess on top of that, we have the challenge. Everyone thinks recruitment's easy, don't they? Until we know it's not. An interesting part for me is I've always worked for really large corporates in-house where HR, people, TA, they've had a voice at the board. Mm-hmm. We now at Omni, we work with mid-sized organisations in the main, and it's a massive challenge. With a brand like yours, how do you elevate everything you've just shared and get those TA challenges at board level? So, recruitment isn't easy, and they get it.
It's understanding your board. I think that's quite an easy thing to say, right? But it's understanding your board. What drives and motivates them? What do they want to hear? 9 times it's bottom line, right? Where are we going to make the more profit? Where are we going to see the least amount of turnover in terms of people and attrition, etc.? So for me, how we get our voice at board every single time is data. Data is key. I know everybody's probably reporting or has some method of reporting technology, but when you can convert data into a language that they understand, so by telling them that if we have a time to hire that is 70 days in this specific commercial channel, it's going to affect revenue by X, Y, and Z, their ears prick up. And instantly then you're at that table. Another good mechanism to use is alongside data as well, is giving them the knowledge that if you're at that table, you can see things that possibly they can't. A good example of this is a board level meeting I was in once, and we were talking about investing in estates, so investing in a new estate. So building this whole new facility that we're going to have more people in, etc., etc., etc. So all the directors are there talking. They're saying, right, it's going to cost this. We're going to put this in there. We need this. We need X, Y, and Z. We need this logistics, this facilities, these people, etc., etc. And I said, well, do you know if the talent are out there? Like this location, have you done a talent mapping of the populace around that area? No. So I said, you don't know if the people are there from number one. So you're investing all these millions of pounds on this estate. You don't know if you can fill it. Okay, that's one thing. So if you don't know if you can fill it for the short term, how do you know you're going to fill it for the long term? So not only that, you've got to factor in higher advertising fees and maybe recruitment agency fees and search and select fees. Then you also have to invest in more marketing spend because you have to figure out how to attract the populace there. And then add on top relocation subsidence. Because if people aren't in that location, you're going to have to relocate them in, whether that's in country or across Europe or across the globe. So once they started hearing that, the conversation started shifting a little bit. And instead of it being a definite, we're going to have it in that site, it was maybe we look somewhere else, but let's explore our options. But if my voice wasn't at that table, that conversation wouldn't have even been done, and we'd invest in that estate. And then they'd have come down to us, like they all do probably in this room, and said, we need people here now, tomorrow. And we are like, oh my God, you're not going to get it. Right?
So, right. And we're going to talk here, we have a panel conversation later, and the key headline for that is around workforce planning, which is
perfect.
essentially what you just described. I don't know how many organisations we've worked with that we've advised on when they have the internal TA team in that scenario, but they didn't have you at the board.
Yeah.
So it's, why can't you find these people? It's because they don't exist in this location at that salary, you know, with house prices up here.
Absolutely.
And that's the gap, isn't it? That
Absolutely.
TA need to be at the board, so they are with procurement making those key decisions.
It makes such a difference as well when you're going through, and I'm sure we all go through them, salary round conversations. You know, how do we increase our salary for our people? A lot of the time, members of the board, they don't realise the differences in inflation in salaries and what competitors are paying necessarily, because they're too far away from it. So when those confirmations are coming in, budgets are all being signed off, and you're putting an extra 150K, whatever it might be, or the other managers are putting extra headcount budget in, they're quick to sign it off and say, no, actually, we're not going to do that because our budgets are this. But without your voice at that table, you can explain why salaries are increasing, what your competition are doing, and that further enhances the ability to get sign off, which is better, obviously more beneficial for your company.
Yeah, fabulous, thank you. So given all of that,
Yeah.
what in your mind do you think are the basic skills, which is quite a leading question,
Yeah.
isn't it, for TA today?
For TA, I guess most of them is obviously communication is one, but understanding data. I'll go into it a little bit further, maybe sort of semi-basic, but I think any person in TA, whether you're at leadership level or just coming in, if you can hire people within our industry that can understand how to get data in, whether that's time to hire data, whether that's populist data, candidate data, whatever that looks like from the D&I perspective, or just general pooling and pipelining, getting that data and conversing it into a language that your hiring manager or your business understands, that will further add the influence and impact you can have on your company. Conflict management, I think, is always a good one, alongside negotiation and influencing, because how many, like you just said then, we want them in today, we want them in tomorrow, we want this, we're not going to give you an increase in salary because of X, Y, and Z. If you can have somebody in TA that can actually soften that blow with the data, but then influence and negotiate to say, if you do this, or if you give me an extra few days, I can bring you a more diverse candidate slate, for example. Or I can go out in the market and find somebody in this location, which will cost us X, but they're going to be here for the next 3 to 5 years. Similarly, if you have somebody that, a hiring person that is literally like, I need 5 years of experience in this, they need to be coming from this red brick university, they need this. You've got somebody in TA that understands the marketplace and then can negotiate back to say, well, how do you quantify 5 years of marketing? Quantify that. What does that actually mean? Because my 5 years in marketing will be vastly different to your 5 years in marketing. So you can't say that we're at the same level. So breaking all those down, I think they're fundamental basic skills that probably were more advanced a few years ago. But I think if we can start shifting that down to the basics and start hiring people or training people on those, we'll be in a much far better state, I think, for the future.
Absolutely, really, really good point. Now, I want to talk about brand, of course. You're from a great brand. First time I met Marcell, he was just like in the most amazing clothes. We're all there, just so jealous with what you're wearing. You're not representing Adidas today, I guess,
No,
really,
no,
are you? So you're in normal.
Yeah, it's a normal person.
Normal. So let's talk about brand.
Yes.
Why is employer brand and EVP more important than ever?
Candidates, literally, they are the driving force. I think they always have been to some degree, but I think definitely from like 2018, I certainly felt the shift of candidate power, right? If I look at the company that I work for, when I was a recruiter there, it used to be very much of, they're all going to want to work for us. Don't worry, throw an advert up, they're all going to want to work for us. We dictate pay, we dictate where they're working, etc., etc. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, that all shifted dramatically. We had our amazing brand campaigns, right? That was just sport has the power to change lives. You have impossible is nothing. You've got all these athletes and all these wonderful campaigns, but nothing on an employer branding point of view. So you're going out there and candidates are applying as consumers. You're speaking to them and they're like, well, Now you've told me you're based in Stockport. I don't really fancy that. But there's nothing telling them that we have a wellness facility, we have football pitches, gyms, restaurants, nutritionists, all these great things, like the career progression, the training development. There was nothing of that showcased at all. And in this day and age, especially with Gen Z coming through and the next gen, Alpha Gen coming through, crazy names, they literally don't really care about the companies anymore. What they want to know is what's in it for them. And they're not there for the 15, 20 years of what we all maybe were used to, you know, find a job. My mum used to say, find a job, you stay there for life, you get a good pension, blah, 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 right? These guys now, these are just like, what's it going to give me in the next 6 months? What's it going to give me in the next 12 months? Why should I work for you? Not why should I want to join your company? You know, you shouldn't dictate to me that you should or that I should. You know, so employer brand and EVP are paramount. So I'm glad that this whole day is central around a lot of those themes.
Yeah, brilliant. And we have Katie joining us later, who is our expert. We always just look at her when there's ever a question to do with brand. Just look at Katie. So we're going to be definitely talking more about that later. Thinking, I guess, about extending your brand then. So what are the good ways that you've seen to grow a talent pool and a pipeline to become proactive and get ahead of hiring needs?
Investment. And that's not just monetary. I think time. It's really hard to say that, right? Because I'm sure we're all busy. I'm sure we're not all strategic. Some of us are probably still operational at our levels as well. So it's really difficult to balance strategic talent acquisition with operational and with lack of resource potentially. I'm sure none of us, well, if we're all fully capacity with our talent acquisition teams, congratulations. I'm sure most of us are not, but that's really difficult as well. So if you can invest time in talent pooling and talent pipelining, you will find it the more beneficial. And what I mean by that is the word talent pooling is such a box tick exercise. We're going to do a talent pool for this division, this area. You'll do it for a month, 2 months, then it's forgotten about, then it dies, and then 6 months later when you've got your hire and they're flourishing, and then a year later they've left, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to that talent pool. Oh, I'm at this job, I'm at this company, no longer looking, it's gone. So some of the best examples I've seen is when you've invested a little bit of time, once a week, bi-monthly, creating an event or a network that engages those people. One thing that I've seen in a couple of different companies now, and I thought it was just a one-off, but it started trending across a few. So like I said before, what I do is I go to different companies and I educate and teach on DEI and inclusive hiring practices. And a couple of these companies started doing what they called, and I've used it, so I pinched it, organic talent pipelining and talent pooling. And what they mean by that is that they've done all the hard work, so they found all the talents for whatever division that they're looking for, or whether it's an EDI talent pool. And then they've shifted them into a community space. So now we might keep them in a CRM or behind locked doors because of GDPR, that scary post called GDPR. They've done something where they've got release forms, whatever it may be, got the compliance, and then put them into a dark social space. So something like a WhatsApp group or a community group that's held by them. And then they're engaging them all the time. So, but they're not the ones that are then investing a lot of time. So they're not going, hey, we got this, we got this. They're subtly dropping things in that keep them engaged, but let them talk. So then they build their community, and they do something like this that Omni and IHR do every month, every other month, where they come together and they can talk upon different themes, whether it's employability, whether it's DE&I, whether it's how to uplift your CV in the modern world or something along those lines. So these candidates now are working for your organization in a talent pipeline and talent pool, educating each other for your benefit, because then you can dip into that talent pool at any point and engage them. So they were so powerful. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, I can obviously spend a little bit more time going into that. I won't go into it here because of the time we have, but that's just a fantastic way of pipelining and pooling. It's unbelievable. Really, really good.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, really good. Thank you. You talked about ED&I there.
Yes.
So going on to our last question. We work a lot for ED&I. We do have James Crichton at the back as well, who'll be talking later about what we've done to really support inclusive hiring. Yep. What are some of the best examples you've seen across Adidas or other organisations that you partner with as well?
There's quite a few different examples. I think reasonable adjustments is always some organisation. One organisation in particular, they had like their own bank of reasonable adjustments. So they had, when they approached candidates, they would offer them a sort of suite of what reasonable adjustments that they may need, so they could pick from. But they went an additional step to that. So for example, If I needed a reasonable adjustment for wheelchair access, I could pick that and I could attend or whatever. But then also, if the lighting was too bright for me, I could ask for the room to be dimmed. So what this organization did is they obviously accounted for that across all the interviews. They made it a level playing field. So they said the lighting's going to be dimmed, there's going to be wheelchair access, etc., etc. So all the candidates coming for the interview all had the same experience. But what they also did then is on the email invite to all the candidates, we said, if you, however, the lights in the room are not to your adjustment, you can change that as well. So they had that flexibility that if another candidate came into the room and it was too dim or maybe too bright or whatever it might have been for them, they can also adjust that change as well. So it doesn't have to be one thing across the board. So reasonable adjustments often gets confused as you have to change it for one and it has to be for everybody. That's not the case. So they adjust it, which is quite good. One final example I'll do because of a short time is removing barriers of entry. Very, very simple, but we never ever do it. 2 years experience, university degree, CV. Do we need them? Do we? Like, I know it's an ongoing debate. Salaries, all this type of stuff. Look at your job descriptions. Get them, get rid of them. Look at the words that you use in job descriptions. How biased is the language? How discriminatory is the language? Very, very simple to do. And loads of organizations and technology now out there to do it. And moving swiftly into the employer brand element. Change it. Change your EVP. Employer brand isn't just employer brand, it's different. You have employee brand as well. So from a DEI perspective or ED&I perspective, you've got your employer brand, which is showcasing your EVP, all the good stuff that you want to do at your brand that you've got a recruitment marketer person managing maybe. Your employee brand is everybody that's working for your organization becoming brand ambassadors. Use them. They're great examples to increase your DEI efforts in recruitment. Really good examples.
Yeah. That kind of, it just reminds me, I was talking to, have you heard of the Comms Rebel? She's a Manchester person as well. I worked with her when I was at MAG and she's just this shy person and now she is a real great thought leader on comms all around internal branding and engagement. She was sharing a story that TA have done all their job. We've hired, everyone's diverse, it's great, and then everybody leaves. And that's really hard, isn't it? About when does our job start and stop versus the culture of the organisation, and that has to be right. And we do have challenges. We don't name names at Omni, but we do have challenges with some of our clients where culturally they're not ready. So the board are wanting us to do all this brilliant stuff, but then people leave once they're in. And I do think that's a question for TA about how much we can educate. It feels like we've actually progressed quite a lot, whilst others maybe haven't yet.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I think it's all getting a bit blurry, isn't it, really, in terms of where our role starts.
That's why we need the seat at the board.
There you go. Yeah, ahead of HR. Don't say that next week when I'm with the CIPP. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Talking to you.